Penn State's run on elite quarterback commitments looks like it's going to continue.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That is right. It is a Locked On Crossover. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. He is Brian Smith, host of The Portal, the show entirely dedicated to the transfer portal, yes, and high school football recruiting. Thank you so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. Thank you to the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Official visit, another weekend ready to take place for Penn State. Could they land a commitment? Could they land two commitments after this weekend? We're going to talk about that. Plus, a five-star offensive lineman has Penn State in his top four. What are the chances there for the Nittany Lions? And we got to begin with Penn State. This run on elite quarterback prospects committing to the Nittany Lions. Drew Allar, Ethan Grunkemeyer. Hey, I think Beckham Kritz is underrated, but then they get two in the class of 2026 with Peyton Falzone and Troy Huhn. And Brian, Peter Bourque, somebody that we have mentioned, that we have discussed, talking about, hey, this is a strong possibility here, now gets a little closer to that reality with 24/7 putting in a crystal ball for one of the top quarterbacks in the class of 2027 to commit to Penn State.
Yeah, this is a kid I heard about quite a while back. He's got the size. He's 6'3", 6'4", plays up in Massachusetts. All the big heavy hitters from the Big Ten, Notre Dame, et cetera, have taken a look at him. Some have already offered, and Penn State's been hard after him. He fits the profile for what Penn State wants. High academic school. He's a kid that's got the size, can be a pocket passer, and he can move around a little bit too. So, I mean, I don't know what got into Penn State all of a sudden with quarterbacks, but that's recruiting in general, though. When you least expect something, that's when it will transpire. But good for Penn State. They've needed more depth at the position. We talked about that last year. When the playoffs were coming around, you got a quarterback hitting the portal, and you only got your main guy. They were fortunate enough not to have an injury, but this is why quarterback depth matters. And I think James Franklin's taking that very serious.
This is a domino effect that has been created by Drew Allar. This has to do with Drew Allar, he's average, or he won't be that good. I'm not concerned about what people say in the internet comments. The scouts, the NFL believe that the people that are projecting Drew Allar for the 2026 NFL draft say that he is in the mix to be a number one overall selection. You don't think that's going to resonate with future quarterback prospects that, oh, I can go to Penn State. I can develop in Happy Valley and have a realistic outlook if I'm a quarterback, I can go and develop at Penn State and potentially be a first overall pick coming out of college.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I mean, Allar has the measurables that they're looking for, and he's probably one of 5 to 8 guys at quarterback that would be in that category for now. But size and his mentality, he's a nice guy. Somebody's going to be good in front of a microphone. All those things fit it. If he comes out and he balls out in 2025, at least he will be a first-round pick. I would be shocked if he wasn't, because his arm strength and his ability to throw from really unusual angles, that stuff matters to the NFL. He fits the profile. So, again, if he has a really good year, though, why not Drew Allar? Anything's possible. So I'm kind of glad to see him come back. He probably could have went in the draft and got some kind of look last year. I don't know where he was projected, but probably wouldn't have been first round. He's got a chance to move up. I think he made the right decision.
And that's why he came back. I think he would have been a fringe first round pick in this past draft. I mean, because he has, like you said, intangibles, stuff that you literally cannot teach. That goes along. The chance at that goes a long way. So, but there's definitely things he needs to refine. I don't disagree with that at all. But he is in the mix. It's also, Brian, what you talk about, going back to relationships. Penn State has been at this recruitment for quite some time. This conversation's about Peter Bourque, but I'm trying to explain how Penn State it's gone are the day, bringing in a 3-star quarterback and trying to develop them into a quality college quarterback. But, the NFL outlook is questionable to an extent. And that's not trying to be disrespectful to Trace McSorley or anything, but Penn State did they turned him into an NFL caliber quarterback to an extent. I mean, that was somebody that was talked about as a safety. And ever since James Franklin's been there, he's made quarterbacks better than what they are going into their future. He's helped develop that, but it goes beyond that. Danny O'Brien steps in as a relatively younger quarterbacks coach, and it's the relationships that they continue to build, continue to have that strong bond through all of it. And like I said, if you recruit somebody very early in the process, you're more than likely to get them at the end of the day.
Yeah, getting in on prospects, especially in today's era, getting in on them early, it's not necessarily an offer right away, but you build that bond with the family, the player himself, the high school coach, 7-on-7 people, trainers, all of it. That's how you win in recruiting. It is relationship based. I don't know how many times he's been to Penn State or what the communication's been like, but if they're trending to possibly gain a commitment, 24/7 staff is, they're not going to put in a crystal ball just because. Yeah, that means there's a really good chance that there's intel that says, hey, they've done the best job. I get it. And this early in the game, though, for a 27 quarterback, that is really unique. So good for Penn State. They've done a good job. They put themselves in the right position. And by all accounts, he's a top 10 quarterback in that class generically. Maybe top 5. That stuff will take care of itself. He's got 2 years of high school left. But all the measurables are there. He's a Northeast kid. This is the kind of player that Penn State should get.
They've recruited Massachusetts well, and Massachusetts isn't this, stronghold for college football prospects, but Penn State seems to be able to find, especially in the, Northeast, they are able to find that 1, 2, few prospects. It could be 1, 2, or 3, more than that sometimes, where they're able to bring them in, and they're severely underrated because of the competition that they face. So Penn State doing its research, but Peter Bourque, he's being recruited by the likes of Michigan as well, Syracuse, and Penn State. Those are a lot of schools that are in proximity to him. But Bourque is your traditional pocket passer, which he can move. I'm not saying that he's a statue, but he has that similar build to Drew Allar. He's 6'4". He's 200 pounds presently going into his junior season. He's got a cannon of an arm, solid footwork. He is a top 10 quarterback for a reason. The consensus says top 100 player. This is with all the rank on 3, 24/7. Top 10 quarterback, top 100 player in the nation. And then if Penn State can get, and I'm not saying this is a guarantee, but if you're projecting, if 24/7 feels confident enough to say, hey, we can put a prediction in for a top 10 quarterback to go to Penn State this early in the 2027 cycle, says a lot to me.
I totally agree. You don't see many early projections for quarterbacks. It's just not very common unless a kid's about to commit in the next 48 hours and the cat's out of the bag. And I highly doubt that he's going to commit right away. But then again, stranger things have happened. It is recruiting in the NIL era, so anything is possible. But if they're that far out in front, again, kudos to not only James Franklin and his staff, but the back office staff, the recruiting people. They're very valuable in this and making sure everything goes right from the unofficial visits to all the intel they send out to the prospects and everything else. So this is why they're doing so well with their roster management in Happy Valley. Recruiting is good. They do a pretty good job with the portal and not overspending, but getting players they need. All of it together has got Penn State as a solid top 10 program by any measurement, and I kind of think top 5, top 7. They're doing great.
According to On3, Brian, you asked about the number of visits, the quantity of visits. According to On3, Penn State's landed 6 of them. They have 6 visits with Penn State, 3 to Michigan and 2 to Notre Dame. So that is who is in this race for Peter Bourque. It's not, Penn State is going up against schools that they should defeat in recruiting cycles, that this should be easy. This should be a home run. Or they should beat Syracuse. They should beat Maryland. No, you're going up against other blue bloods in Michigan and Notre Dame. So this recruitment has not been easy. Don't get me wrong. We've talked about how Penn State is the school that finds the diamond in the rough. They find the underrated prospects. You see that time and time again, where prospects that are these, average low-end 3 stars. Why is Penn State taking commitment from them? And then they vault up the recruiting rankings when they're finalized here. This isn't one of those cases. This is a top 10 quarterback right out of the gate for the most part. Everybody knows about him. And Penn State at this point in time is in the lead for his commitment.
I mean, I think you kind of said it. Like, what else can you really ask for them to do? You know, they do their own evaluations, which I love.
Yeah.
You've talked about that on some of the podcasts I've just watched that you've had, or the ones that I've been on. I mean, a lot of coaches say they don't care about the recruiting rankings. That's completely false. They want that to be high for their guys. I get texts from guys in back, hey, rank my guys high, literally. So anybody that ever tells you that, they are bold-faced liars. But at the same time, you still got to do your own evals. It's got to fit your culture. Kids from a private school in the greater Boston area, I believe, and fits the profile of Penn State passer to a T. He's got some Drew Allar traits as far as height and his wingspan and just kind of the frame. They did their due diligence, and they've got him on campus a bunch.
Yep.
So I'm not surprised that he was picked to end up in Happy Valley.
All the more impressive with the fact that you bring in 2 quarterbacks, and I know they're just committed, but 2 quarterbacks in 2026, another quarterback in 2025. You'll most likely still have Ethan Grunkemeyer and Jackson Smolik in the fold. It is a crowded quarterback room, and Penn State is at least in the driver's seat for another elite top-tier quarterback to go along with the number 1 running back in 2027 and a top 3 wide receiver. 2027 could be historic, Brian. We got to pivot now. We talked about that at length, but we got to pivot because Penn State's still not finished in the present. No, 2026 is ramped up, and a 5-star offensive lineman has Penn State in his top 4. Stiff competition. Let's see if Penn State can pull this one off. We'll talk about who that is coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Did you know that if you are new to FanDuel, now's the perfect time to sign up? Because if you head over to FanDuel.com and you place your first $5 bet, get this, you will get $200 in bonus bets. That's right. $200 in bonus bets if it is your first time using FanDuel. And FanDuel has so many things that you can make bets on, that you can make wagers on. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game. NBA playoffs are going on right now. Before tip-off and even live during the game, you have player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. And it's the college football offseason, but there still are things that you can bet on that are college football related. National championship odds. Penn State's win total is up. Do you think Penn State's going to have more than 10.5 wins or less than 10.5 wins? If you like those bets, you can make them over at FanDuel.com. And if you are new to FanDuel, head over to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets to use on those lines. Again, that is over at FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. That 5-star offensive lineman is Immanuel Iheanacho. Everybody's known about him for a long time. Talk about an early recruitment. You had to be early in this recruitment if you wanted his attention. So Penn State being in the top 4 is fairly surprising, Brian. I thought that, I think it's surprising that Maryland's not in there. So Penn State kind of takes that place of Maryland. Don't know what happened there. Honestly, don't really care. But Penn State is going up against Oregon, who I would say is the prohibitive favorite. Auburn's in there as well. You've been covering Auburn fairly a lot recently, so you can speak to them a little bit. And LSU. So a mix of the West Coast, East Coast, and the SEC. This top 4 is kind of crazy, if you ask me.
Yeah, I've been around him a few times. I saw him at Auburn once. You don't need a guide to figure out which one Immanuel is. He's 350 pounds, and he is a big.
He could play
man.
Day one.
Yeah. He's very athletic. His size is ridiculous. He's got massive hands. He's got all the traits you're looking for. Probable NFL player at some point. But here's the key with him. We don't know where he's going because, like you said, Maryland at one point was considered the leader. They're no longer involved. Oregon is the hardest team to track in the country with recruiting because 95% of the kids they recruit are from outside the state borders. And then you got a school like Auburn who has got this crazy trend of getting kids from the Maryland area, but their defensive coordinator used to be the head coach at Maryland. So that's kind of the connection. And it's just like those traits just all around. It's like, okay, I don't know where he's going to end up. So I'm curious to see if Penn State is a viable option, if a lot of his decisions NIL, I know Penn State, you going to have to talk about this, but if Penn State stepped up their NIL some, but like Oregon's is on another planet.
Is it really?
Oregon's? Yeah. It is. When they want somebody, you're not going to outbid them. That Phil Knight. But at the same time, is that the best way to go about it because of your locker room? I think Penn State does a tremendous job not overspending and not screwing up their locker room. I mean, they were in the Final Four last year.
Culture
one of
matters.
the reasons they were. If you don't have chemistry, you might make the playoff. You're not going anywhere. So look at Tennessee. Disarray. I mean, they got pounded by Ohio State. Oh, most teams did. And they just didn't look like a program that was all together, even though they got a lot of talent. Those things can happen. Penn State may not get quite the same talent that Oregon does some of the time, but it's close, and they keep kids around. They retain them. That's how I would prefer if I was a head coach to use it. But anyway, that's enough for my tangent. Kid like Iheanacho, though, if you're going to make an exception, a possible day one offensive tackle starter, if you think he's that motivated, and that's the key. If you think he's that motivated because physically you can't teach the gifts, then I can understand it. So like Jackson Cantwell took a whole bunch of money to go to Miami. They think he's going to walk in and start. Okay. Well, I trust the people they have in charge for the O-line there.
Yeah.
I get it. They're probably going to lose their offensive tackle, Maui Noah, and they'll just replace him. Penn State's got a great O-line this year, but they got a lot of upperclassmen. So I'm sure he could at worst play guard as a freshman and maybe move to offensive tackle. Would it shock me if Penn State made a run at him in terms of NIL as well? No. If you're going to do it, again, it's got to be truly an elite guy. So that part of his recruitment fascinates me to no end, Zach. And I'm curious, do you think that Penn State will make a run more for linemen with NIL, or is it going to be more skill guys? What's your gut going to tell you?
Well, with Peter Bourque and Keemon Spell, I'm glad you throw this question back at me too, because I feel like it's Q&A with you because we're talking recruiting and you're the expert here. But I think Penn State's NIL is in a much better situation than it was. The fact that you can have a chance at Iheanacho, Brandon Arrington. I mean, Brian, I think this is because Nicholas Singleton and guys that Penn State has a really strong connection with because they're in state. So it's almost like I don't want to call it a guarantee, but this one's easier when they're out of state and you're going up against the likes of Oregon and Auburn and just school. Miami of Florida's not in this recruitment here, but they could be if they really wanted to. They went with Jackson Cantwell. So be it here. It's interesting because these conversations at least haven't happened as much in the past 5 years where it's, Penn State's in the mix for somebody that has 5 or 6 other suitors. No, we're talking about prospects that you wouldn't think, Penn State might get a 5-star here and there, and that's great. That's something. But for a top 5 player in the nation, right? This isn't a fringe, and I don't want to dismiss it like this, a fringe 5-star. But Iheanacho being a top 5 player and Penn State having a legitimate chance, he could start the following season. Penn State's going to lose the 4 out of the 5 starters, and Penn State could lose more if Anthony Donko ends up going into the NFL draft early. So there might be a completely brand new starting 5 going. Well, Cooper Cousins will be back, so there will be 4 starting spots open potentially in next year's offensive line. So if they're pitching Iheanacho to come in and start right away somewhere, probably work out.
Why not? Why not? And again, not everybody begins their college career at left tackle. Sometimes it's a different spot. Maybe he's a platoon player. Maybe he's the big tight end. Well, what a big tight end that would be. There's a million ways to do that kind of stuff. That'd be kind of funny in a way, actually. Yeah. That would be something they try to do. But Penn State's not dying for O-line help by any means. They've recruited it well. Yeah. But again, if you're going to spend the cash, do it on somebody like that. And like Arrington or somebody else, I like Arrington just as much at receiver as I do corner, maybe even more. But I think Penn State wants him at corner, if I remember correctly. But if he called him and said, I'm not coming unless you take me at receiver, they would take him at receiver.
I think they'd make him an exception.
Yeah, so there are some exceptions like that. And he's a California kid. You might have to do that to get him to come to Penn State.
So be it.
You know what I mean? Like great players like that, you have to find the extra loophole to make it work. Who knows? Maybe that's the way it goes.
I like Penn State's chances a lot better than I would if we had this conversation. Say this, Iheanacho's in the top 4 a year ago. at this point in time with where Penn State's NIL used to be. I'd say no chance. This is just for fun. It's just out of respect because Penn State was early in his recruitment. I do think that beating Oregon is going to be tough for obvious reasons, but Penn State has an official visit. They make his top 4 very recently. I give Penn State just as much of a fighting chance as anybody else. I think they're in the same. I think Oregon's the leader, but I think Penn State chances are just as good, if not better, if not slightly better than Auburn and LSU respectively.
I wouldn't be shocked by that. They got the distance factor in their favor, and they're winning. No offense to Auburn, but they got a long way to go in that department. They didn't even make 500 last year. And then you have the situation at LSU. It looks like they're going to be pretty good this year, but they've underachieved for a couple of years in a row. Oregon is the one that I think that's the biggest competition to me because they're recruiting well. It's a cool program. Everybody seems to like them. The uniforms and all that. Yes, it does matter. I know fans don't want to hear that, but it does matter. Kids pick schools.
It looks cool, Brian. It looks cool.
That's kids base their decisions on that. Yes, they do. 100%.
I'm not surprised.
And sad, but that is also true. Anyway, their O-line's done pretty well too. Penn Sewell, some of the other guys that have come through there recently. They just had a guy go late in the first round this year. So they're producing guys too. I think this could end up being a Penn State-Oregon battle down the stretch. And I don't know him well enough to say that I know what his number one criteria is. Only been around him once when I really had conversation with him. But Immanuel Iheanacho is a guy you try to figure it out because that's a future National Football League offensive tackle.
Your classic Big Ten recruiting rivalry, Penn State versus Oregon. Well, at official visit weekend, now that there was a brief little bit of a break there, official visits are back for this May 30th weekend. And Penn State, I get it. Things come up, plans change, prospects, recruits. They have certain schedules, but I'm not sure what Penn State was planning with this weekend with the visitors that they had set up. However, there is a chance for them to land a commitment, maybe even 2. We'll talk about it on the other side of this break. So, Brian, I'll lead off this final segment with this. The fact that Penn State's visitor list for this weekend of official visits consists of about 20. Maybe there's a last-second edition at the time of this recording that we're not going to know about. But out of the 20 visitors that have been planned for a while, 16 of them are already Penn State commits. So it's basically just a weekend where everybody's going to look around and say, like, well, we're all on board here. So there's 4 players that are uncommitted that are going to be visiting. And that's, like I said, plans change. There's conflicts. Schedules are going to, have to be adjusted. I get it. But I'm not entirely sure what Penn State was planning here because we've talked about that before where we say, well, Penn State gets strategic and they want, a certain amount of already prior commits to be there to almost encourage and say, hey, we're committed. We're bought in. Now it's your turn. But when it's 16 versus 4, right, I think it seems like it's a little bit of overkill.
I'm not sure what the reasoning for that was, but they probably want to get those kids settled, make sure they're lined up, and this is their first and their last visit, the whole 9 yards. Now, there might be a couple that take official visits. I don't know, but those things play themselves out. But some staffs do this. Clemson is having all their commits and their recruits coming in on this weekend. So every staff does it a little differently. Penn State won't have as many guys, I would assume, that are committed taking official visits the next few weekends, but I bet a lot of them are still back to help them recruit too. So maybe they wanted to spend more time with the committed guys. That's another possibility. There are some teams that do that.
Yeah.
But having a handful of kids not committed there, especially since, they need offensive tackles, they got a couple guys like that coming to campus, there's some benefit to having committed players in Happy Valley. So I'm sure James Franklin will figure it out and they'll manage their time very, very well.
Now, as for the uncommitted players, let's really focus on them because Penn State could generate 1 or maybe even 2 commitments from 4 of these uncommitted prospects. Like I said, I could go this in Kevin Brown, Messiah Mickens. So maybe this does play into Penn State's favor because there are so many verbal commitments that you're bound to get at least 1, maybe 2, right? So the 4 uncommitted prospects are Rodney, Colten, and Brian. Since you're based in the southern part of the country, he's from the Georgia area. You know this linebacker prospect fairly well. He's a solid 4-star, top 250 player. Penn State needs a third linebacker. They're looking for one, and I know Sincere Johnson put Penn State in his top 3, but you got to imagine maybe that's an Ohio State commitment. You still got to have a backup plan if you happen to. You'll take both if you end up getting Sincere Johnson to commit to you. Kosi Okpala out of Texas is another prospect that I've heard is very high up on Penn State's big board. He's from, like I said, he's from Texas, another top 300 player, one of the better linebackers, and somebody that Penn State is very much high on. Interior offensive lineman Marky Wahlberg from the Massachusetts area. So we go back there where Penn State identifies a really good, underrated prospect. And then Marlon Bright, a name that's been linked to Penn State for quite some time. He's from the New Jersey area. He's a raw, high-ceiling offensive tackle, insanely athletic, carries 6'6". He stands at 6'6", 270 pounds. That is who Penn State's actually projected to land a commitment from first and foremost. But I could see maybe if this weekend goes well that Kosi Okpala might not be able to turn Penn State away after this official visit. So those are the two that I'm really circling for this weekend.
Let's start with the New Jersey prospect, just because he's an offensive lineman. After the way I saw Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State use their offensive line to bully their way into the Final Four last year, to me, it just proves once again why it's such a premium. And 8 of the first 32 picks this year in the NFL draft were offensive linemen. That's 25%. I don't care what you say. That just shows you the importance of the big fellas. So they need to do better in New Jersey. And when James Franklin got there and all the way through, he's been consistent at recruiting that state. He's a DePaul Catholic kid. Yeah. Marlon Bright's like one of those guys. I watched this film right before the show. Does he have some technical work to get through? Yeah, but offensive lineman, that's a lifelong learning skill.
You can teach that too.
Yeah. And he's a kid that he moves really well. He bends well. He's got really good length. I'm a little surprised he's not ranked higher, to be honest. His upside is extremely high, and he's not filled out yet, and he's not one of those kids that's all rocked up. Like, he's going to change his body. He'll end up being 6'6", 310 at whatever school he goes to. Prototypical offensive tackle prospect for the major P4 level. So that's very good news. I don't know much about the kid from Texas, the linebacker, but the way Penn State has recruited linebacker in the last 5 years, I'm not going to worry about it. They've done a great job of evaluating kids, whether it was a 3-star kid or a 5-star kid. Yeah. They've done just a tremendous job. And I know they changed coordinators, but Knowles is as good as it gets. So I'm not going to go against what he's thinking either. So if Penn State doesn't get anybody that they're really, really after, did they kind of come across this kid and they like him better than some other schools did? Who cares? Penn State understands linebacker recruiting, and they have for a long time. So either way, they will be fine there. As for Georgia, player from Georgia you're talking about, he lives maybe an hour from me.
Nice.
Florida State was a school that was very hot and heavy with him, but I'm not buying Florida State getting big-time players right now. They got to prove it to me. And I know that's probably a mean way to say it, but Rodney Colten could go to a bunch of schools. I mean, Penn State would just seem like a more logical choice based on everything, but his list is kind of wild. Colorado, Ole Miss, Penn State, UCLA, there's a whole bunch of programs after him across the country. We'll see, but Penn State might be able to get him in. They've done this before where they knock a kid out with the official visit and they close it down. So that wouldn't shock me either, because I don't think UGA is involved. If the Bulldogs are not involved for a Georgia kid, all bets are off. You got a lot better chance.
Yeah, he does have I pulled up his list right now. Georgia was, it seemed to be the leader in this recruitment, but if you say they backed off, then it's anybody's chance for Rodney Colten. So like I said, Okpala from Texas is very interesting because he's been fairly local. He's visited Texas a ton, Texas A&M, Houston, Baylor, right? It makes sense. So the fact that a school in Pennsylvania has his attention all the way to the other side of the country, it's not like we look at Colton's recruitment, UCLA, Tennessee, Georgia. Okay. But Okpala, Texas. Oh, school from Pennsylvania. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. His list is really broad. I mean, Deion's in on him. Tennessee was in on him at one point. Georgia. With Georgia, you never know. Like, they're really picky about height and stuff. and he's not the tallest kid. So I'm a little surprised they offered him out of the gate, but his speed and athleticism fits what they're looking for. So maybe Georgia will get a visit, or maybe they'll get a visit down the line. They're always a threat for an in-state player, and he lives hour and a half from Georgia's campus, maybe. So, yeah, they're a threat, but I would say overall that this is a kid that's probably more likely to leave the Peach State than to stay in it.
Easy to talk Penn State recruiting when they are on this kind of streak between being in the mix for 5 stars, early commitments for some of the top prospects in 2027, and then potential commitments in the not too distant future. We're talking a few days, maybe a couple of weeks here, in a good spot for a lot of priority prospects. So these conversations are very easy, very enjoyable from my side of things, being the Locked On Nittany Lions host. Zach Seyko, your host of Locked On Nittany Lions as always. He is Brian Smith, host of The Portal. Again, thank you to the everydayers for making us a part of your regular routine. If you are not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to both shows, either on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation. Brian, as always, thank you for a fantastic show, and can't wait to catch up very soon next week.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.